Welcome back to the Mind Body Mushroom, brought to you by WindanSea Coffee. I'm your host, Jordan Ryan, and today we're diving into the captivating world of coffee craftsmanship and innovation. Our guest is Chris Dennis, the general manager at Ox Coffee Roasters right here in San Diego. Chris isn't just serving coffee, he's redefining it. Known for his innovative approach to coffee creation and his impressive showings at the U.S. Coffee Championships in the Coffee in Good Spirits category. Chris combines precision, creativity, and passion into every cup. His signature creations include competition-famous orange creamsicle, coffee cocktail, have earned him recognition and respect across the specialty coffee community. Notably, Chris has competed multiple times at the U.S. Coffee Championships, consistently placing among the top competitors and demonstrating remarkable skill in coffee mixology. Today, we'll explore Chris's journey from coffee enthusiast to coffee innovator, uncovering the secrets behind his award-winning beverages, his insights on leadership in the coffee industry, and his vision for the future of specialty coffee. Grab your favorite cup and settle in. This is an episode you won't want to miss. Let's get into it. Chris, welcome to the show.
Hello.
Hello. So I want to get into a little bit of your background, kind of how you found coffee. I imagine that we kind of have slightly different entrees into the industry and application. I don't know a ton about your background, but my background in the military, I always joke that the nation's wars are fueled by caffeine and nicotine. So coffee is very much this like industrial functional product that is meant to kind of keep you alert, get you going, and help you work these 16-hour days, running boat ops, running flight ops, keeping you sharp. So what first drew you to coffee, and was there a specific moment when you realized that this was more than just a job?
Oh, I feel like that moment just happens all the time, but I was enamored with coffee like really early on in life. My parents both drank coffee as like a regular part of their routine, and I was also just like told I was not old enough to have coffee, which also then made me want it more, just out of like natural defiance, because I'm a middle child, so we don't do what we're supposed to do at all. Like we carve our own paths. And it's not just like a like middle child in general. I'm like 2 years in between both sides. So like middle child.
Wow.
And then like just couple that with like genuine curiosity that I've always had. Like I don't think there's ever been a time where someone's told me no and I've gone, I accept no. Instead I go, okay, so there's a creative way to find out how to get to yes. It's just no to this specific way in which I pose the question. And so my parents used to not only like brew regular coffee, but they had like instant folders for like on the go stuff. And my mom really liked instant folders. And so I would like sneak it like at night and like when everybody was like asleep. And I'm like a very logical human about like many things, but especially about things that I like want and like how can I get here or get to what I want. And so like instant Folgers is super easy. You just need hot water, but I couldn't turn on a microwave because it was going to chime. It was going to make sound. But I could, however, use a tea kettle and let it get hot enough to where it was going to get be able to dissolve the coffee, but not necessarily start to squeal. And so I would do that. Just grab the instant Folgers. I would heat it up, dissolve it, and then try it out. And then like when the canister got low enough, then I would like add like dirt to it to like make it look like nothing.
Exactly. Cutting it back in.
Yeah. So I did that until like one day my mom finally like at IHOP was like, okay, you can try this coffee. And yeah, it was a different experience entirely. Like I definitely tried it. She didn't think I tried it at IHOP. She went to the bathroom and my aunt like rushed me. She's like, you should go for it now. And then my mom came to the table and she's like, okay, fine. You're ready to try coffee. And I was like, little do you know, I've been doing this for years.
Yeah, first time. This is crazy.
Exactly. And her shock was that I liked it. And so then I continued to drink it at the table. But my reality was I'd been doing this for a while. And so that was kind of the entrance, was the curiosity about it. And then the falling in love really happened, I think, the very first time I was in a Starbucks. I was like on a family trip. We went to Starbucks. They used to serve these espresso chocolate brownie things. They no longer carry them, which is sad because they were delicious. But I, like, as a kid, heard all these bells and whistles going off, and we were all allowed to get like one drink or whatever. And I just wanted the brownie, and then I walked away. I didn't even wait for my brownie, but I heard like the steam valves going off, and I like would see them like, you know, grinding or putting things into the hopper, and like hearing the grinding of the coffee, and all of those different things that just like, you know, your typical coffee shop sound. It's kind of like if you ever watch like old school episodes of Superman, that like that was Dean Cain's Superman, and they talk about how like a newsroom should have like all the hustle and bustle to it. That's the excitement of being in a newsroom. It's the same thing with coffee. Like, it is very exciting to hear all those sounds going off, especially as a kid, because you don't know anything except for, I'm at a coffee shop, and then it just all of a sudden becomes this like musical ensemble that's happening for me specifically, which makes sense because my dad is a musician, and so like it just kind of hit me in that way. And so yeah, it's something about all of the sounds and all of the chaos and the hustle and bustle really just like attracted me, and I was just like, "Ooh, I'm gonna work here someday." Before I even know what a job was supposed to be, because at that point, like, my job was just like whatever chores I was told to do. And you know, you always get promised that you're going to get paid for them, and you never do. That was my reality. So,
That's
yeah, that just kind of became a lifelong dream.
There was like ASMR videos of like, coffee shop stuff. Like, totally, there's a lot of, you know, the steam and bells and whistles and the sound of like the gurgling milk. Like, it really is like a symphony. That's so interesting that your dad was a musician. What was a little bit of your background? Where'd you grow up?
So I grew up in the hood. We grew up like Compton, Inglewood, that whole area of life. Most of my family on my dad's side still lives in Carson today. And so grew up there. And then my dad kind of progressively moved us like a little bit further out of the hood as we could, like as he could level up in life, just to get us in safer circumstances, and maybe just like better school opportunities to help us get to the best that we could do with our potential. And so, yeah, all over Southern California, mostly like LA County.
Interesting. And did you know, how did you view coffee? Like, was it kind of like a hipster thing? Was it like, you know, what did you see it as in contrast to maybe the culture that you grew up in Compton and Southern California, kind of in the hood, like you said? You know, did you feel alien to you growing up that way?
I didn't have any concept of coffee outside what my parents did and what I saw like my aunts and uncles do. And it really just felt like it was the adult thing. And I didn't know why it was the adult thing. Like, I didn't know that there was like, this was their caffeine juice. Like, I had no idea that coffee had anything to do with caffeine. It just felt like it was an adult way of life. And if you like look back, like television in their 90s, like kids weren't really drinking coffee. Adults were drinking coffee on television. And so it just really, like, there was no explanation to me of like, this is what it is. It was just kind of my natural assumption is like, okay, one day when you're an adult, you get to drink coffee. And that became like a strong rebuttal for me as an existing person who was like, you can't tell me what to do. So, and I think then as I like started to get into like my teenage years and realized that people my age were drinking coffee as well, it still never set in for me that there was a caffeine factor, because everyone was drinking Starbucks and drinking Frappuccinos, or you were going to like your local 7-Eleven or gas station and hitting that button for a French vanilla latte. And so everything is like just sugary and sweet with like this like caffeine part or coffee part of it. But the caffeine part never really, like, energy drinks to me were what you did for caffeine. Like, I, to this day, will swear by Green Monsters. I don't drink any other energy drink. It has to be the Green Monster, because one, the flavor is amazing, but then two, it gives me like exactly what I need in the moment that I need it. But like that was how I learned to get excess caffeine, was through energy drinks. It never really occurred to me the caffeine portion of coffee until I started working in coffee.
And what was your first coffee job?
So technically, my first coffee job was on campus when I was attending Biola University. We had a coffee shop on campus called Common Grounds. So that was the first job that I officially was like hired as a barista for. But my first coffee experience actually happened when I worked at Disneyland. I
No
worked
way.
there in my like last year of high school and then going into college. And I worked in this area called Hollywood. And so in Hollywood Foods, there's like Taste Pilots, and there's this place called Award Wieners that I worked at. And then they had this little smoothie place called Schmoozies, and Schmoozies had an espresso machine in there that like almost no one ever ordered from. I think before the time that I actually had a real coffee experience there, one person ordered one hot chocolate one time, and it took like 6 of us to figure out how to use the machine. But
Oh,
that also was just like a bad thing for me to be there because I already had this bug of interest. And then you give me a machine in front of me that's like, I think it was a La Marzocco, and it was like a 2 or 3 group hit. It was a huge machine, and it was like, I graduated in 2005, so this was like 2004. So this is when machines were like massive. Um, but it was just sitting there. It's in a smoothie shop. Like no one's ordering coffee at a smoothie shop, and so like that literally just like I'd be on an 8-hour shift, and I'd be like, well, if I'm not doing anything else and all of my chores are done for the day, like I'm gonna go play with this thing. And then like the moment of truth happened. They had an anniversary thing where they let people sleep over in the park at California Adventure. And they asked me if I wanted to work for that night. So first they put me on this caramel corn part, and I was just like
mhm.
slinging caramel corn left and right. And then after that, they were like, a lot of people really want hot chocolate, so we're gonna move you over to Schmoozies and like have you make some hot chocolates on the machine. And I literally like called a friend that worked at Starbucks, and I was like, I don't know how to use this. Like, tell me how to. And they like kind of talked me through it, and then I found my way through it. And I sold probably like 200 hot chocolates that night. And by the end of the night, I was a self-declared barista. Literally did nothing with the espresso. Had no idea how to use the espresso whatsoever. But self-declared barista in the sense that I put together drinks using this espresso machine. Therefore, I'm a barista. So yeah, that
That's so
was
fun.
like my actual first coffee experience.
That's great. And so, at what point? I mean, at some point, especially now, as you are a competitor, you travel all around the world, all around the country, competing in like barista competitions. And I want to ask you some more about that. But something that there's a distinction, obviously, between like Folgers and Starbucks and third wave specialty coffee that really focuses on the origin, the altitude, the processing, the roast profile of the coffee. Where did that split come from you? Where you kind of made that distinction between like, okay, I understand now coffee is this drink that you can order, that's like a frappuccino, but where was the shift towards like, wait a second, there's really like an artisanal aspect to this that you kind of dove in.
Yeah, I always tell people that the best thing I learned early on in life is to be authentically yourself and to take steps towards yourself, not towards what you think the goal is supposed to be or what you think the path is. Like when you take steps into your own interests, then you end up kind of creating your path. And it may look similar to an industry path, but it also may look very different. And the important thing is you were satisfying self along the way. And so you remain happy. And I think that's what happened with me and coffee. It was just this organic growth as I pursued things that interest me. So like after being, I worked at Common Grounds, and when I did, then I had some friends who, all of us just were really on fire for like social justice projects. And so we got involved with
Mhm.
something called Invisible Children, which was just helping to aid the stop of this rebel war and this rebel army that was being basically crafted but like held against their will by this guy named Joseph Kony. And he was like mutilating people if they tried to descend from the army. But these are like kids that are like 4, 5, 6 years old that are being inducted into his army to do what we could. And we had a lot of friends that had a lot of bands, either at Biola or just in the Fullerton, La Mirada area. And so we started doing these like pop-up concerts. And my contribution, besides like helping organize the concert flow, was just to, I would go and get donations of like milk and espresso and like chocolate powder or whatever. And we would make lattes and sell them for like 50 cents, 75 cents, whatever. And raise extra money while at the concert, for invisible children. And so that to me like let me know that there was like community involved in coffee, which was great. And so then when I like took my next steps into Starbucks and working there, community was still something that like was super important to me. And so then like I worked at this silly little small Starbucks in Texas. That was my first Starbucks position, after being denied to work for the company like twice. And within like a month, we started doing this like mommy and me hour, because I just noticed that there were these moms that started showing up, but they were struggling to find a place to sit comfortably, or they were like dragging tables together, but like trying to keep an eye on their strollers. And so I was like, what if we just had an hour where we know these girls are going to come anyway? We might as well put tables together for them and create a space so they feel comfortable. And then that like ended up turning into like a couple of moms, into like several moms would come during this hour. And so not only did it like create a safe place for them to be moms together, but also it increased business naturally, because we became a community space for them. And that helped, like diving into those realities is what helped me move along. And so that eventually I moved into the coffee master program at Starbucks, because I knew that if I became a coffee master, that I would have to do like tastings and things like that with customers as well as with staff. And it creates more community moments. And so I did that, and then, kept moving forward, and eventually left Starbucks, went to Coffee Bean. Coffee Bean was a very wild and fast experience for me. I was at like, I think 4 stores in like under a year, maybe a year and some change. And again, like just everywhere I went, I was kind of just getting a little bit deeper into the coffee aspect of it. Coffee Bean was actually the first time though that I dived into tea, because they're coffee bean and tea leaf. And so I did their like roastery tour. We learned so much about tea and so much more about coffee in doing the roastery tour. And that kind of just like leveled me up even further. And like, I really want to know what happens before it gets to us, because we'll talk about this in the shop all the time, right? Where you're the last 10 feet of the coffee. And this was the first time that I was seeing something that represented what happens before that 10 feet. And so like seeing that roastery experience really like opened my mind to, man, I want to see so much more. I want to know so much more. I really want to experience like what's the first 10 feet like, what happens there. And I've always had this like interest in just like nature in general. And so I think it like took me down this road of study. And everything just kind of kept evolving. And so then eventually, like after Coffee Bean, I went to Nordstrom, because I really wanted to like get some good management experience, and feel like I could run a business well. And from Nordstrom and all the things that they taught me, I ended up at Clutch Coffee, which is honestly one of the golden opportunities for someone like me who's pursuing coffee at a greater scale, to be able to work with the Perry family. And like when I say work with the Perry family, I would say probably for like the first year and a half of being there, I would see and be alongside one of the Perrys at least once a day. Like whether it was just like they just came into the store to get a cup of coffee, or like Heather bringing her kids in because she wanted hot chocolates for them. At least once a day, I'm running into a Perry, and all of them are champions. Like barista champion, roasting champion, latte art champion, brewing champion. The amount of just like natural coffee knowledge that comes out of their mouth without thinking about it was just like, it was like Disneyland to me. And there was definitely challenges to the job for sure. Like we opened a brand new drive-through where they had never had a drive-through in the company before. And that was my job to make it successful. And so there was so many challenges, but also like the guy who virtually taught me how to do pour overs was Todd Goldsworthy, who is Holly Perry's husband and a 2-time US brewing champion. And I was like getting to work alongside him once or twice a week. And so like it just, again, I kept taking steps towards myself, and the path just sort of opened up for me in terms of, hey, here's what's next, because you just pursued what you were interested in.
Wow, that's two things I want to kind of double click on there. One is um, coffee as a mode for social change,
Hmm.
which is really interesting and something that, with my company, WindanSea, we've also kind of dove into because we donate to a lot of veteran surf therapy and veteran nonprofits. I realized that, I got injured while I was in the military, and I kind of found that there was a lot lacking in the chronic disease and injury
Yeah.
management within the Western, model for medicine. So that's what kind of got me finding a lot of other holistic paths. But more so than just like I'm not independently wealthy. I wouldn't be able to just donate a bunch of money, but I could use my business as a vehicle for that change and to give back to the community that I cared about. And another thing that you said that was really interesting was talking about how when you get to a coffee shop, you've really only explored the last 10 feet of coffee. um, that was an eye-opening experience for me as I started getting into the science of roasting, the science of processing, and just cultivation in general. Because it's incredible how many artisans and how much expertise that coffee cherry, the plants, the cherry, the seed, how many steps along the way, all the way up to the roaster, which has dedicated their life to, learning this craft. And then you get to your barista, who's also dedicated, their life or at least a good portion of their career into making this cup that, 99% of people kind of take for granted
Yeah.
as just, yeah. So I think that's a really cool, that I had a very similar kind of like, wow, like there's a lot more to this. Have you ever read the book The Monk of Mocha? Are you
No, this
familiar with
is
it?
first time in life I've heard the name of it.
Oh, dude, you got to check this out. It's awesome. So, quick little synopsis of it. It's you know how they say that coffee originated in Ethiopia?
Right.
Um, well, this guy, this happened in like the early 2000s, but he was a kid who grew up in Yemen. And there's like a little bit of a debate between if coffee actually started in Ethiopia or if it started in Yemen.
Yeah.
And this kid comes from the village where supposedly coffee originally started. And at this time, there was the whole Yemeni civil war going on over there. So this he had to like smuggle some coffee beans out through past warlords and all this stuff, and he eventually gets the coffee into the world circuit, and he starts getting a lot of recognition and kind of bringing the attention to Yemen as a place on the map for coffee. So
That's awesome.
well,
That sounds like something
yeah,
Mike Perry would do. Like
totally.
Mike Perry, a thousand
It's
percent would be like, if this is a great coffee, I don't care what it takes. I'm getting it into the U.S.
yeah, no shit. So what eventually led you to Ox Coffee Roasters, and what makes it special compared to other roasters in San Diego?
Uh, a few things. It was kind of a 10-year plan. I felt like San Diego was just this place that I would come to and I would feel like comfortable and at peace and at home in. And I felt like everything that was happening in LA for me was always just a reminder that this was not home. Which is weird because
Mm-hmm.
it's where I grew up. I grew up all over LA, but I never felt like LA was where I was going to be able to set up like roots for my long term life.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I felt like San Diego just had opportunity that was untapped, especially because I think pre-pandemic, the coffee culture down here was incredible. There was,
Mm-hmm.
so many different like coffee events and so much coffee education that was happening, which makes sense. There's so many like micro roasteries down here and so many small, family owned shops instead of like huge chains. At the time, I think pre-pandemic, the biggest chain down here was Coffee Bean, and
Oh.
Better Buzz, and then obviously Starbucks. But Better Buzz was more synonymous with San Diego than any of those chains because it was a
Mm-hmm.
homegrown chain that grew out. And
Yeah.
then you had all these other tons of local roasters, but it was a very rich coffee culture. And then something in the pandemic happened that just like shifted that. And a lot of that probably is, the pandemic limited community. It really pushed us apart from each other. And so then we had to learn new ways to live life and new ways to interact with people. And I think that that's where it made it hard to just like bounce back, because coffee is one of those things where it's like doing life together. Oftentimes, right? Like people have their meetings, they sometimes virtually work here, they have girls' night and they have date night and all those different things. Kids come before and after school to study. And those were things that like I've always loved about coffee shops. It's just like the natural community space that it creates. And so then like post pandemic, I would just keep like coming down to San Diego just to like, especially I think even during pandemic, because like they threw the rules out the window and they're like, it's a social distance now here, we'll do whatever we want. So like I worked the entire pandemic. My store was open the whole year. And by the grace of God, we ended up in the black at the end of the year. But because I worked the entire time and like I was there, like I was the only one on my entire team who did not get COVID the entire time. When my team would die because of like the social, not die, but when they would get COVID because of social distancing rules, we had people in pods. And so like a whole team of 6 people basically were like, okay, you're not available to work. So then like my days became extra long days. And so whenever I had my days off, I would be like, I'm leaving town. I don't want to be bothered by my team. And I also don't want them to feel crippled by my presence, just meaning if they knew I was still in town, they would call me for little things that they could solve themselves if they just like felt empowered. And so when I was like, I'm going to San Diego for the weekend, they literally would not bother me unless the store was like flooding or something. And so they became stronger as leadership without me during that time. And I got to just kind of get away and spend more time with myself. But during the pandemic, I accidentally, I'm really good with like knowing exactly how much money I have and like exactly what's going into my savings and exactly what's going into my bills. And so because I had like a surplus of money during the pandemic because I was working but not doing any social things, and then we got like the COVID bonus pay in addition to that, my natural thought was I forgot to pay my student loans. So then I would like pay them twice, 3 times and ended up like paying off a significant chunk of my student loans during the pandemic, and got to the point where like my decision to move to San Diego accelerated by like 2 years because I had paid off so much extra. And so I kind of reached my ceiling at Clutch, and I felt like I was ready for a journey that was going to stretch me a little further to get me to really my ultimate long-term goals in coffee. And it just felt like the time to look. And I told Clutch this when I got hired there. I've told my bosses here this when I got hired here, that every year, right around my birthday, I look for jobs. Every year. And it doesn't mean that I'm unhappy with the job that I have, but it does a couple things. One, it validates that where I am is where I want to be. So that I get a job and I don't take it. Also, it validates that maybe where I am is where I need to be because I'm not getting offered jobs. And so I'm not quite ready to take that next step. And also, if I do decide to stay here wherever I am, then happy birthday to me. You've now like had another year around the sun where you're really excited about the space that you're in. Or if I take on a new job, also happy birthday to me because I'm taking this next big step in my life. And this is an exciting closing of that chapter. And so leaving Clutch was really difficult in the sense that nothing was going terribly wrong. Like my store was performing well. I was one of the top performing stores in the company. This was the 3rd store that I ran. I had trained and developed so many leaders and managers. Like I was doing good. And I think that, even had I stayed like another year, I may have been in the opportunity that I was kind of looking for. But I also knew that like I had reached my ceiling and it was time for me to take a risk and invest in myself. And I also knew that San Diego was something that I was like, until I pay off my student loans, I'm not going. And so all of that happened at the same time. And this job opportunity, I came down here during San Diego Pride and someone reached out and wanted to talk to me about a potential opportunity. And so I was like, okay, we can have a conversation. And I literally like they had offered, and then I said, here's what I want on top of the offer. Like, your offer is not enough. And it was things that I was like so sure they would not say yes to. So I was just like, I'm just gonna throw it out there.
Not.
And they said yes to everything. And it was like, again, I gave them a range of things and they went to the top of the range. So they like really just were after me in a good way. And I was like, well, they called my bluff. So I think I have to go do this. I think that it's the time. It's the exact right time. And so I left and I moved down here. I worked with a shop called Queenstown Village Cafe in La Jolla. So Queenstown has like 6 restaurants in the San Diego area, and they opened their first patio coffee bar in La Jolla. And I helped just elevate some things that were not necessarily where it needed to be and correct some things that were going wrong. So I was with them for about 6 months, and then I came down to Ox. And Ox kind of became this thing, this opportunity for me to put my own signature on something from the inception. Queenstown was already started and already had some version of a vision, and I was there to kind of help make that vision come true. Ox was like a blank canvas. We had very little things that were in place in terms of what we wanted to be. We knew that we wanted roasting because we were part of a hospitality group. And so we wanted to bring roasting in-house for the hospitality group. And we knew that we wanted a cafe that had a elevated coffee concept. And especially in Mission Valley, we wanted to stand out as someone who was providing a better or a more signature and artisan coffee experience. I often tell people, because in third wave coffee, there really is like another 2 waves, right? Like, there's like third wave coffee is McDonald's is third wave coffee now, right? Third wave literally means, it means that we manipulated the coffee somehow. So if you had to push a button to craft this beverage, you're third wave coffee. And so there really is 3, 4, and 5 that exist. Like 5 to me is like the mod bars. It's the, I'm doing every single part of this. We did the roasting. We do the sourcing. We even maybe hire the distributors. We visit the farms. Like all of that's like your 5th wave, right? 4th wave is kind of like where we kind of start existing right now in Ox, and that is, we're doing so much of we're doing a lot of the roasting, but like my staff, or not a lot, we're doing the roasting. But my staff doesn't know the roast profiling, even though I have a small staff, right? I'm working with that, and I'm growing in that space and working with other roasters who fully understand it. We are sourcing through Inter-American, so there's a space in between us, between the farm. But also they're a trusted voice, and so we don't necessarily look at them as like, oh, like you're just sending us like whatever crap. We know that they're sending good products because they've been known to send good product and properly vetted. But we are crafting all the beverages. We teach milk steaming. We teach how to properly pull shots. My team knows how to dial in, and they know the language and some of the science behind what's going on. And so like, they are coffee professionals. They're not just like, pushing a button and like things are automated for them. Like, that to me is where third wave is. And so I think that's the difference in Ox in terms of, especially in Mission Valley. I don't think you're going to find a shop that's doing exactly what we're doing or close to what we're doing. But I think the biggest difference that we bring is the community aspect. And again, even when I interviewed here, I told them these are things that matter most to me. Is like, if you think about it, and I say this so often, but it's always true. Every cup of coffee is just like less than a handful of beans. And somehow less than a handful of beans are bringing people together all over the world to do life every single day, right? So that's so powerful. And if we forget the community part is what is most natural about coffee, then I think that we lose track of like how beautiful this industry really is. And for me, on a more personal note, like, coffee is a part of nature. It's something that it was literally a gift from God that creates community. And in the Bible, that's like the main thing that God tells us about, is to love God and love people. And so we have this vehicle that came out of the earth that was discovered on accident that brings people together. I want to honor that across the board.
Dude, that's beautiful. I want to ask you kind of a follow-up regarding San Diego's coffee culture, because that's it, and in relation to the pandemic. So what I was going to ask was, how do you think San Diego compares to like your more traditional, like Seattle or even Boston or maybe New York? I'm not too familiar with some of the other like big coffee hubs, but I always kind of felt that San Diego, um, similar to their micro brew for beer scene, there were so many micro breweries out here,
Yeah.
and it really put San Diego on the map as a hub for specialty micro brewed beer.
Yeah.
Would you say that San Diego is still kind of like that? And do you think it can recover from where, that dip from the pandemic?
Hey, don't. I hope that people don't hear this and hate me for saying it. Um, when I came down here and moved down here, so I typically I try to visit like 50 coffee shops a year.
Oh,
Whether
wow.
that's like during travel for competition or like I just spoke at Coffee Fest in New York last week, and so I got to hit like two other coffee shops while I was there. But pre-pandemic, and I just don't know. Maybe this was like me not understanding coffee at the level that I understand it now.
Mhm.
Pre-pandemic, I thought that coffee, not just the culture, but the quality was significantly better than what it is now. Um, in San Diego, there are a lot of small shops and not a lot of quality coffee experiences.
Mm.
And for me personally, like I've had this conversation with customers of ours too, that like if what I'm serving you is the same thing as what you get at Starbucks, then I don't see a reason for you to be here, be at Starbucks, right? Like it's
Mhm.
probably going to move faster there. You know exactly what you're
Totally.
going to get there. Like I have friends that work in this level of the industry and higher, that compete with me, and they'll be like, I'll still go to a Starbucks when I travel because I know what I'm going to get. Like it may not be the
Mhm.
best cup of coffee, but at least I know the
Right.
experience is always going to be that experience, right? And so like if I take a risk on a coffee shop in my local neighborhood because I want to try to support local, the local's not giving me anything different than what I could have gotten at Starbucks, at Coffee Bean, at Better Buzz, then like what's the point? Like now we're just sort of dividing the industry for no good reason. And so there are
Right.
some really great coffee experiences in San Diego. And there's good coffee culture that's growing. We teach coffee education here. So we do like latte art classes and espresso and brewing classes, and we have like coffee cocktail classes and date night events. But they sell out like all the time. And I often find people that are like, oh yeah, I wanted to go to one, but it was in LA. And so there is also a desire for coffee culture down here that exists. I just think that like something shifted and it's not being met properly. And we have a customer that lives in Chula Vista that comes up every Saturday because they're like, the coffee in Chula Vista is not this, right? And so, and I had a friend who just started working with a roasting business basically, and so he's one of their like LA sales reps. He came to visit me like maybe a couple weeks ago, right before competition, just to hang out. And he went to 6 or 7 shops that day. And he was like, there's not a single good cup of coffee that I've had today. And he goes, I didn't want to fully believe you that there was no good coffee in San Diego, or there's like very little good coffee in San Diego. But I think the reality is there's a lot of shops, there's a lot of hunger for quality coffee and quality coffee experiences. But maybe there's just not enough understanding of the people manipulating coffee to have that same experience. But all of that being said, beauty's in the eye of the beholder, and these shops exist and they exist in spades. And so there is definitely a customer base out here that appreciates all the different varieties of coffee that are being offered in San Diego.
Yeah, yeah, totally. That makes sense. Um, so I want to talk a little bit about your competition drinks. So your competition drinks are wild, but in a good way. And where does that inspiration come from? What's your creative process like? And what's the story behind the orange dreamsicle?
Oh man, I all of my competition drinks come from one of two places. There's either most places are there's an ingredient that I did not like that I wanted to find out how to make it palatable to me and great for other people. That is like the majority of the drinks that I've made was like, oh, I hate this thing. So like I now need to turn it into something great. And then the other half of it is I just maybe had a conversation or heard a term somewhere in an episode of like Chopped or Iron Chef and thought, oh, I could turn that into a drink. And then like went and slept and woke up the next day and was fully inspired and knew exactly how I was going to craft it. So it's a combination of those two things. And then it's literally like Heather and Holly Perry used to kind of like have a love-hate relationship with my creativity when I worked at Clutch, because I would have like maybe every week I would be submitting a drink to them and be like, I got a new drink. Like, because my goal was I wanted to have a drink on every single seasonal menu for an entire year. One whole year of just Chris's drinks. And so I just kept submitting things. But I also learned, like, there was one point in which Heather was like, are you doing okay? And I was like, yeah. And she was like, okay, it's just you haven't tried to give me a drink in a couple weeks. And I was like, but like, I just felt like, oh, I wanted to stop because you kept saying no to everything. And then she was like, because your drinks are like not really cafe friendly. They're good drinks. They're just not cafe friendly drinks. Baristas can't replicate them or they're too expensive or whatever the case was. And I was like, oh, I can do something with that. And so then learning how to refine them to this, like, what can I do on cafe versus what can I do in stage? Those became the reality of like how I craft drinks now. And so the orange creamsicle literally was like one of those things that how it started and how it ended were two different things. But the innovation and the creation of that drink was based on like just recounting personal experience of going to Ruby's Diner whenever I was at the beach and like growing up in SoCal and especially kind of growing up in the hood. Going to the beach was like not it was not this thing that like I got to do regularly. So it was a thing that I fully appreciated whenever I did. And now I get to go to the beach all the time. Like as an adult, I've kind of learned how to pivot my life in the way that I get to celebrate more of the things that I want to celebrate and not make them a luxury. But as a kid and as a teenager, whenever I went to like Ruby's, like I would get the orange dreamsicle shake and then I would get some French fries and just dip it in there. Like I want to say there's been a time or two in my life that I've actually had a burger on their menu. I can't remember a burger to save my life. Like, I don't know what it tastes like. I don't know what they put on their burgers, but I do know the shake and I know that I dip the French fries in it every single time. And so, yeah, so that was the creation of the drink was I wanted to on stage as much as possible, share this experience that I had that was valuable to me with the judges and with the spectators that were there. And then, we got 6th place in the nation last year with the combination of drinks that I did on the stage. And so we introduced that drink into our restaurants because it was the only one that was, again, cafe friendly. So all the other drinks, they're like, what if we did this drink? And I was like, there's just no possible way that you guys can accomplish this drink on like if a customer, if you have every table order like 2 or 3 of these cocktails, like your bartender is going to be glued to the bar the entire time and doing nothing else. And so it's like, there's no way that's going to happen, but I think this one works. And so we introduced it and it's done well.
What's in it? What's like the general recipe? You don't need to divulge anything.
I think the way that we're serving it at the Rise and Shine hospitality restaurant, so that's Breakfast Company, Breakfast Republic. Actually, I think Breakfast Company might have stopped serving it, but Breakfast Republic still does. It has vodka, Kahlua, some vanilla syrup, and orange peel. And then it's shaken much like a kind of espresso martini, just not as, vigorously and not to create that same experience. Strained over ice and then drizzled with a little bit of like half and half on top just to kind of add a little extra creaminess and sort of produce a flavor of like white chocolate. And then there's espresso in it as well. So there's kind of a lot of different flavors going on in there. When I did it on stage, it was a vodka and gin based drink with a little bit of triple sec. But we had to change some of those things to get it to be cafe friendly.
That makes sense. Wow, that sounds really good, dude. I have to come give it a go. I'm a big fan of I love carajillos
Yeah.
are delicious. I do a little one just at home, but I kind of discovered the shaken coffee drinks, a little
Mhm.
bit like vanilla and yeah, getting that the frothiness to it. It really does add a new dynamic just to people mostly just think of adding a little bit of cream to their coffee, but the essence of shaking it up
Yeah.
adds a whole other dimension, in my opinion.
Yeah. And it's like, there's so many variables when you're shaking, right? Because the amount of ice you're using, how cold the ice is, what kind of ice it is. Like, I've honestly found for my espresso martinis, like, my favorite way to shake is with a cube instead of with chipped ice or cube kind of broken down ice, because the cube dilutes slower.
Yeah. That's yeah, right, right. It's trade off. Oh my god. One. Okay. So now I want to kind of pivot to some of how daily rituals. We talk a lot about how daily rituals shape wellness.
Yeah.
So, what is your daily coffee ritual and wellness ritual? How do you kind of stay creative and sharp in such a fast-paced industry, especially when you're working, super long days? Like you said, you're only halfway through your day.
Yeah.
It's 2 block over here.
Yeah. I don't have a daily coffee ritual, and I know that like people would be like, "What do you mean?" But I've been in the coffee industry for like almost 20 years now. I've had so many coffees, like so many coffees.
Yeah.
Just in New York Coffee Fest last week alone, like I probably in like one day went through like 20 something coffee beverages.
Oh
Yeah,
my god.
kid you not. And so coffee for me has always been this like fun thing when it's like tasting and evaluating, experimenting with. And
Mhm.
so, if I have a friend that gives me a bag of coffee and they're like, "Oh, we have this new thing," I'm gonna play with that. Like I'm gonna play with it. Like I
Mhm.
have so much coffee
Mhm.
equipment at home, and like it'll be like an everyday thing. But in terms of like just my normal ritual, outside of I taste coffee every single day, and I always encourage shop owners and shop runners, and even like my shift lead and assistant manager here, like whatever coffee we're brewing, just taste it. Make sure it's like still
Mhm.
good. Make sure it's good quality that we're giving out. Like sometimes things channel
Mhm.
when you're brewing a batch of coffee, and like it otherwise, like you weighed out the right amount, but something went wrong and it channeled, and you've got this crappy cup, but now you've got this crappy cup that several customers are getting, right? And so
Mhm.
I always taste coffee. Like I'll literally just like take a sip of it, be like, cool, we're good to
Mhm.
go. We're ready to go for the day. But my coffee ritual, like leading up to competition is like when I pick up the most rituals, and it will typically be like I will do a pour over every single day, and I have like a theme of the month. And so like not last
Cool.
month, but the month before, I was just brewing old coffee. Like I had so much old coffee in my house that I was like, I really want to like play with coffees that have been at least 6 to 8 months off
Interesting.
roast. And just seeing like what could I do with it, what kind of quality could I bring out of it, with a pour over, with a full immersion, with a hybrid of it, because we have so many hybrids now, which is amazing. But doing just different water temperatures, things like that, just getting creative in the way that I express the manipulation of a specific coffee. And that to me is what allows creativity to keep going. Because it's not
Yeah.
necessarily, I'm not looking for an end result, right? Like I'm just looking
Right.
to just sit around and play in the sand and go, maybe I make a sandcastle today, but also maybe I just like bury someone in the sand. And then maybe I just like have like a starfish that I do in the sand, and like that's okay. Or maybe like my sandcastle has a moat today, but maybe it doesn't have a moat because I actually don't know how to build a moat. Like, and I thought I did yesterday, but I learned I don't know what that is. So I think just having fun without having sort of an object goal is super important for me with coffee. I think that's what keeps me the most creative.
And what did you kind of learn from your experiment with, you know, I don't want to say expired, but let's say coffee that's kind of on its way out? If you have a tip for, you know, maybe somebody in their pantry pulls out, oh crap, I forgot I had this bag. How do I make it taste better?
Good coffee is good coffee, and bad coffee is bad coffee, is what I've more than anything learned. It will, like, the more that it ages, the more sort of one noted and flat the coffee becomes, right? And so it may have had like 12 flavor notes in the first like week or two, and maybe even up to like that fourth week off roast. But then after that, it just starts to like concentrate. And so you have these micro flavor notes anymore. You have macro flavor notes, and it's like, oh, it's just berry or it's just chocolate. But it's also, if it's a good cup of coffee, if it's well extracted, it's still going to be well balanced and super tasty, right? Or it's going to be really unpleasant in your mouthfeel and really unpleasant in like the drinking experience, and you want to maybe cover it up with like cream or sugar. And I'm not that guy. I'm a black coffee drinker. And so if you gave me a coffee that you were like, it's better with this, then I automatically know I don't like it at all. Like it's not going to appeal to me. And so I've learned that for sure, but I've also learned like it's almost entirely hard with a good coffee to find a French press version of that does not work, right? So the older your coffee gets, the more it's like you have to go finer on a grind size for a pour over maybe, but realistically, like a clever dripper is a great option. The Hario switch is a great option. A French press is a great option. A Turkish boiler is a great option. Like mocha pots, all those different things are really good options to like go, this is no longer a pour over worthy coffee, but it is a full immersion brew coffee. And then the same thing with like cold brews. I love playing with different cold brew options and like getting fancy about it, right? Like cold brewing with coconut water instead of regular water, cold brewing with vodka instead of regular water. And then diluting that way and just like figuring out like, what does that bring out of the coffee if I change different things? I personally brew coffee at home more often than not with essential water because I love the pH level. I love the calcium and magnesium infusions, and it tends to clarify fruit flavors in the coffee and also just bring a nice creaminess to the texture of the coffee. But it doesn't work for every coffee. It works for a majority of coffees, but I've learned with a lot of new fermentations that it doesn't play with it well. And so ultimately, playtime whenever you're playing with it, but like as your coffee ages, you just have to know that like my scope of the things that I could do with this coffee is shrinking as it ages.
That's really interesting. That actually leads me to my next question, which is about the future of specialty coffee. Where do you see the industry kind of going?
I think that smart people in the industry figured out maybe 10 or 15 years ago that coffee and tea are supposed to be integrated. They are not separate industries, and they play very, very well together. And so if you are one of those coffee purists that's like, we don't care about tea, we don't care about this, then like you are alienating a customer base that is like naturally supposed to be with you. I think the same thing when it comes to like, I mean, you've probably seen this all over San Diego. There's now starting to be these bars that have like a coffee shop in the morning and then they're a bar in the nighttime. It's becoming bigger in SoCal. Just maximizing the use of a space, right? Like that is becoming huge in the coffee industry. And I think that's also where we're going. And then there's just kind of this weird, I think weird is a good word for it. We're in a weird space right now where there's a battle between what was and what is becoming. And that's this like whole co-fermentation thing of like, we are doing something to the coffee after it's been grown and dried, and right before it's roasted, we're adding another space into it. So it changes the coffee in the sense that like if I'm soaking this coffee in like watermelon juice for 48 hours, I'm imparting flavor into the coffee after it's been dried and right before it's been roasted. And maybe, so like when I get on stage and I call a watermelon note, well, of course, because I added watermelon juice into the coffee for 48 hours, but also it
Right.
brings out other notes in the coffee, and they use, things within this, like whether they're soaking it in like guava or mango or watermelon or lemon or whatever the case is, wine, champagne, right? It does something with the biochemical makeup of that ingredient and the coffee together, does something to bring out even greater things in the coffee, right? So there's the purists in the coffee nation that are like, that's not a thing, that shouldn't exist. And then there's like the new wave of innovation in coffee that's going, but what if it does exist in a very positive way? And so I think all of those things are valid, but I
Right.
think that that's where the coffee industry right now is trying to figure out, like, where's the and, right? Because there's this and there's this, and both sides are kind of
Hmm.
saying or they're but we're trying to find out where that and is.
Yeah, that's super cool. I see a lot of espresso shots being pulled through an orange or a piece of
Yeah,
fruit or something like that. And what you were kind of saying too, like experimenting with, what if we put some orange peel and shake it up. We'll use a big ice cube. That's kind of the direction that I see it moving in. And in my business, we work with infusing coffee with functional mushrooms and other
yeah,
adaptogens to kind of not only I think the flavor of the coffee is super important, but I'm coming from it from how do we also improve the effects of the coffee
right,
as this chemical that you are ingesting for a specific reason. And but what I've found is that there's companies like Four Sigmatic and Rise and Mudwater and Everyday Dose and some of these other brands, but none of them have really tried to preserve the coffee essence. And is coffee, from their perspective, is purely a vehicle to get you these other benefits,
yeah,
whereas I think there's still an opportunity to make the coffee come through. Let's be a coffee first drink, but improve the way one can feel with it.
yeah. And we kind of talked about this a little bit when you gave me like some samples of just like, I want to make sure that like as I'm playing with these, I'm like not dishonoring the coffee, but I'm also not dishonoring the product of like, this mushroom product
Sure.
is amazing, right? And it's so good for customers, but I want to make sure that I'm making a drink that like the customer is, one, going to be super receptive of, and then they're also going to benefit so much from, because it's not going to shift them. I think this happens a lot too with just roasters in coffee. They will go and cup and score a coffee, but then they never like brew the coffee the way the customer would brew it at home. And so then
Yeah.
you don't know what the customer experience is. And you're basically telling the customer, this is the experience you're supposed to have. So instead of you liking what you like, you need to like what we tell you to like. Right. And that, I think
Yeah.
that's where we can fail in this industry, is when we stop thinking about what's most important is how the customer is going to receive this. And so when we're talking about infusing mushroom into coffee or infusing coffee into mushroom, like that infusion is
Yeah.
super important. It's so good for the customer to like have those benefits from both sides of it. But we also
Right.
have to understand like what we think is important for them. Like it's like the mom that hides the broccoli in the milkshake, right? Like
Yep.
we have
Yep.
to make sure that the milkshake shows up for the customer. So if my customer, is a mushroom coffee drinker and I'm trying to infuse espresso into their drink, I don't want them to be having an experience that is so far off from their mushroom coffee experience that they're turned off. In the same way, if my customer is an Americano drinker and I'm trying to infuse mushroom in because I know that this is good for them, I want them to still have their Americano, and I want them to have
Mhm.
those benefits as well. I need to hide the broccoli in the shake somewhere.
Yeah, yeah, totally, and also balance the business side of things too, because like you
Yeah.
said, it's like it can't just be this one of one creation. It's got to be scalable. It's got to make financial sense, and it's
Yeah.
got to be scalable and applicable.
Yeah.
Um, so let's move to a little bit of just like what keeps you grounded personally. And is there like a daily practice or mindset shift that helps you stay present and creative?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few things. I pretty much like live in the gym. I'm there at least 4 days a week, but typically it's like six. Um, I just, yeah, it became a discipline. I saw a picture of myself when I went climbing with some friends in 2020, and I was like, that's not what I thought I looked like. So, definitely have shifted for that reason, and it's been such a positive thing. Um, and then in addition to that, I really love reading. My mom's an educator, and I'm a former educator and worked in paraeducation, and so we would challenge our students to read a certain amount of books a year, and I would join them in that journey or go further just to kind of make sure like I was leading the charge. And so I try to, in addition to my 50 coffee shops a year, I try to read 50 books a year. And some of those are rereads. Like one of my books that I read every single year is called The Giving Tree. It's this silly little book that basically talks about how like this tree just kind of gives off its leaves and gives off shade and all these different things. But it just reminds me on the smallest scale to just like, to be present with people around me and to be, open and charitable with the gifts that I have to give, even if they seem small or insignificant. It may be big to other people. And so like this is I think this book is like a fourth grade reading level. So this is not like a novel, but it's one of my books that I read every year because the concept and the principles behind it are something I want to remind myself of. And so, yeah, like I read 50 books a year as much as possible. I also am like a podcast like fiend, but it has to be good stuff. Like, and I like I'm a TED Talk guy. Like I love TED Talks for sure, but like I can't listen to them all the time because I can't like. The crazy thing with like TED Talks is there's so many different like avenues that they go, and I can't fix all of me all at the same time. So I have to be like, right now in this season of life, this is what I'm working on, and I can accept these TED Talks in the relation to them. But like everything from like Amanda Seales has a podcast that I love, that I've been listening to. It's called Small Doses, and she goes through a range of a bunch of different things. I have been listening to a bunch of different coffee podcasts. There's like 6 of them. And so when I'm at the gym, I just kind of put them on as like white noise. And then like one that I've recently been introduced to, which is, it's really funny. It sounds weird, but it's hilarious. It's definitely an adult podcast, but it's called My Dad Wrote a Porno. I kid you not. It's so funny. This guy is, his dad like randomly decided to write this adult novel. It's really bad. It's poorly written. There's terrible grammar and there's like no good storyline to it whatsoever. And though I think the wife discovered it and then gave it to the son to read or something like that. And so the son read it, thought it was awful, and then decided, I want to share this with my friends on a live podcast. So his friends are hearing the story for the first time on each episode, and they're like just talking and interjecting into it. And it's so poorly written, but it's so funny. And it literally like reminds me of like when celebrities talk about how when they have to have like makeout scenes or something like that on set, how unsexy it is because it's so rehearsed and it's like really awkward because there's like 30 people in the room. Yeah, like that's what listening to this podcast feels like. It feels like the most unsexy version of this topic whatsoever, but it is like wild. Like I will be in the gym like literally mid lift and then like dying laughing, so I have to like put down the bar because I'm gonna crush myself. It is such a great podcast.
That's so funny. They're just roasting this guy's dad.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Like
it probably did wonders for his book, actually. You know,
yeah, the book is like actually available to purchase if you just want to read it by yourself. But I'm like, at this point, I don't even want to know what the actual novel is supposed to be. I just want to know this version of it.
That's awesome. If you could serve one drink to someone who's never had specialty coffee before, what would it be and why?
Ooh, so in 2018, 2019 season of US Coffee Championships, that was when I first started working for Clutch. My friend Jen Hong had a Colombian geisha called Colombia Finca La Maria that she was taking to the US Brewer stage. She had previously competed in Brewers and been in the top 10. And so we already knew that she was capable of doing great things. And this geisha was so phenomenal. It's to this day, it is one of my favorite cups of coffee I've ever had in my life. And like literally, I think the next year they sent the same geisha, but a different crop, different season. And literally, like my first thought when I tasted it, and like Mike Perry asked me about this, but I was like, this is trash. And he was like, that's a really good cup of coffee. It's really expensive. It's definitely not trash. And I was like, sorry, you're so right. It's not trash, but it's definitely not this. It's not that Colombian from Korea. And so if I had to serve something to someone, it would 100%, that cup of coffee blew my mind. And like, I had really great cups of coffee in this industry, but it was the most phenomenal coffee that I've had in my entire life to date.
Interesting. And pour over, was that how?
Yeah, she was doing it on the Kalita Wave with the glass decanter, which has actually become one of my favorite ways of brewing coffee.
Oh, that's rad. Now we're kind of wrapping up, but what's next in store for you and your career, and where do you see yourself in 5 and 10 years, and what legacy do you want to leave behind?
Yeah. So I think honestly, what's next is just kind of diving a little bit deeper into like the things that I'm excited about in coffee. And so obviously Ox is one of those things. We just celebrated our 1-year anniversary in February. And so it's weird to think that we've been around that long and that we, have like a regular business that's doing well. But very exciting. And so I think my goal in the 10 years, in 10 years from now, is I want to see that Ox is at 4 locations. If we do anything more than 4 ever, I would want to have potentially like an airport location and then have like a truck as the number 5 and number 6 so that we could do like catering and do like pop-ups and things like that. But I would want to see us max out at that. I think that when we get past that point, it becomes hard to just make sure that the soul of the business stays the same. So I definitely don't want to see us become like, oh, we have 50 locations across the United States. Like, can't do what we would want to do the way that we would want to do it. And so that's the big goal. I think I would love to continue to compete and to coach competitors. I definitely would love to move more into the side of coaching competitors. I feel like that part's more... I feel more comfortable on the coach side. But I love competing. Like there's nothing wrong with that. But I think that like it just, a season off probably is necessary at this point. 'Cause I've been going for like 5 years with this. And it's a lot when you put in so much time and energy, even if you become the number 1 in the US, right? Like becoming number 1 in the US means you have to work towards becoming number 1 in the world. And so like seasons can literally just like bleed into each other. And that's why I would love to like have a season of just coaching. But it's very exciting to be in that world as well. And I think this year I judged barista in 2021, I think it was. And that was when Morgan Eckroth was the U.S. Barista champion. Then she got second place in Worlds. And so that kind of was like an eye-opening experience. And then this past year, I got to judge for brewers at regionals in Vegas. And that was so much fun. And so I definitely would love to get more into the judging side of it and be able to like qualify to judge on the world stage. I feel like that would be super exciting. But I think like that's the path for competition side is I want to get more into judging, more into coaching. I definitely want to compete again, but I don't think that like I want to be so involved in like I'm going to compete every year for the next 5 years. I definitely like see all sides and values to all the parts that are played. And I would love to pivot from US competitions and compete somewhere outside of the US and just see what that looks like and feels like.
Yeah, no, if there's a couple themes I've heard you kind of mention a few times here, it's building community and kind of, creating that third space for people to go and bring people out of their homes and out of their, workplace into coffee. And that's where the giving tree, that kind of, it made me think of that when you were kind of describing the plot, is that, providing, even in something as simple as a cup of coffee, providing, this is what we have to offer, and people appreciate that. Also, you mentioned mentorship with the Perrys, and so I could see how coaching kind of like lends into that.
Yeah.
That now you are starting to mentor that next generation, and then the final thing being like innovation and doing your own thing. Following your intuition, following the things that have kept that fire burning inside of you, because no one works 16-hour days, 7 days a week, gets up at 4 o'clock in the morning, if they're not being pulled by their own kind of self-conviction
Right.
towards something. So I can see how that all kind of ties in perfectly with where you've been heading
Yeah.
this whole time.
Yeah, I'm sure like it's your reality as well, right? Like you got multiple businesses that you're kind of juggling, and you don't
Right.
do that out of like, I mean, just from conversations we've had, and obviously like the charisma that you just have in general. Like if you just wanted to go like get a job that was going to be well paying, or you did a 9 to 5, you have that opportunity.
Right.
You're choosing this path because this path suits who you are and what you're passionate about, and that is the most important thing. Like if I was super like, let's say I was a dad, right, and I had like a whole family at home, I don't think that this would be my path that I would be passionate about in this same way, because I think that these other things would take a greater portion of my passion. And so what I did vocationally would naturally cater to, this is what I care about most in life. And I think that's a key thing for people to understand in this world too. Like I've been on a couple different coffee chats where people are like, oh, I really want to start a coffee business. I have 3 kids under 3 and 1 on the way. Or like this guy said this recently, and he was like, my wife and I have 4 kids and she is getting ready to go on a maternity leave. And I was like, why would you be starting a coffee business right now? Your wife needs you to be present with her. And so like, you kind of have to go like, what's most important in my life, and then like, how do I build myself around that authentically? Again, not chasing what you think is a path to something, but chasing yourself and allowing the path just to naturally unfold.
That's brand. Yeah, 100%, dude. And I think back to about the pandemic kind of gutting maybe the San Diego coffee culture in some way. I think it goes back to the reason why you were able to be successful and keep your store in the black is because you were putting in the time and showing up when it's a really hard business to the margins are thin.
Yeah.
Most coffee shops aren't really selling a ton of coffee after 2 3 p.m.
Yeah.
So you really gotta make your money in the early mornings, and that takes a lot of commitment and is not really for people that are faint of heart, but also have a lot of other people kind of relying on them. Where can people find you and stay in touch? Check out some of your do you have a blog, a website, or how can people get in touch with you?
I have a blog. Please don't find it. It's awful. um, but I have an Instagram. I'm Barista O'Clock because it's always time for coffee. The same for my TikTok. I don't post nearly as much as I want to, but I will continue to post. It's also where I just kind of like let people know the individual things that are going on, whether I'm teaching a class or like, for instance, this Sunday in Santa Monica, I'm doing a pop-up event. And so that'll be really exciting. I'm partnering with a friend of mine who's a baker, and she's just going to throw down some amazing pastries, and I'm going to throw down a few coffee drinks, and we're just going to have a good time. And she's married to one of my best friends from high school. And so it's just a cool way for all of us to hang out and have a good time with the community around them. But yeah, I put things there like education classes I'm doing, or like for next month, I'm going to be at Expo and I'll be teaching espresso extraction classes. So I'm super excited for that. And then you can always, hit me up on oxcoffeeroasters.com in case you're, trying to, if you want a wholesaler, that's who I am. We sell beans, we roast them. They're pretty good. We also train and, put together classes for public and private. And so, yeah, we have like a really good, fun time with coffee around here, which is ultimately what I'm about. Is I want everybody to feel welcome, whether they have had, just espresso for their entire life, or they've been, the caramel frappuccino king, like whatever the case is, I want you to feel welcome when you're in my shop.
Oh, that's a great message. Yeah, I think one piece of advice I try to impart to young people and also just people my own age is that we're kind of in the age of creating your own brand. You know what I mean? A company isn't just going to kind of pave your career for you. I mean, I'm sure that exists, but I mean, with social media and with just the ability to kind of get a message out to the world, it's you got to just you know get confident in front of the camera sometimes, get confident in your ability to speak in front of a group, or hey, I have something that I can teach. And I think that ultimately, by slowly brick by brick, you kind of will build your own brand,
Yeah.
and that's what will have staying value, for the long run.
Yeah. I love that. I feel like it's like I used to call it my own special brand of weird. Like
Yeah,
you can't
yeah.
you can't be my weird. My weird is mine. Your weird is yours.
Totally. And the stuff that seems normal to you, and just mundane and like no one cares. Why would anyone
Mhm.
want to see, X, Y, and Z? It's like, well, you know, like I just started getting into live streamers. Like, have you ever watched it? It's the weirdest shit I've ever like come across. And it's weird. It's like it's boring, honestly. It's mostly boring, but
Yeah.
there's some sort of like voyeuristic like urge of just like, wow, your life is so much different than mine, and that is interesting to me.
Yeah.
So we all have an important voice, and it's good just to kind of get out there and do what is gives you passion, right?
Yeah. I love that. And I love seeing people, like you with this podcast, right? And like the conversation that we had in the shop. I just love people seeing what they love, like seeing it come to life in their eyes. It's so
Yeah,
cool. It's so cool when it's like, I don't know, like if you meet a parent and they're talking about this thing that their kid did the other day, and you're like, I can't even picture what you're talking about, but you were so excited, and I'm excited with you about
yeah,
it.
right, totally. Chris, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah,
This has been the Mind Body Mushroom. Chris Dennis over at Ox Coffee. Give him a follow. Head on to the store if you're here in Mission Valley, or just in San Diego. They're in Mission Valley, and yeah, give them a like. So thank you, Chris. I appreciate
thank
it.